here. I am trying out something new technology-wise, so if you're having any trouble, leave me a comment and we'll try to figure it out. But again, I'm Dr. Mary Barbera. I've been in the autism world for over 2 decades, first as a confused and overwhelmed parent, then as a board certified behavior analyst, best-selling author of The Verbal Behavior Approach, How to Teach Children with Autism and Related Disorders. I have a PhD in leadership, and I've been in the online world, online autism education for 5 years now. In March of 2015, I started my first online course. And so I am pleased to be here. We are going to be talking about coronavirus, the pandemic, and living or working with children with autism. And specifically, we're going to be diving into telehealth and online training and how we're all coping with this. So I do have a couple team members in here in the various comments. So if you write a comment, I'm also going to be trying to, manage things with my technology system in place. So hopefully you can see me. I also have a quiz. A 2-minute quiz for both parents and professionals that you can take after this broadcast at marybarbera.com/quiz. And so I can see the comments here. And let me just check here as well. Okay, so it looks like I can see the comments. If you are here and you're joining, if you can just let us know who you are, where you're viewing from, what kind of questions you have, how you're coping with the coronavirus pandemic. And also if you have any questions for me. It doesn't have to be coronavirus related. For those of you that don't know me well, I have, like I said, been in the autism world for a very long time. I'm also a registered nurse and a mom to 2 boys. One is 23 with moderate to severe autism, and my other son, Spencer, is 22, graduating from college this year. I'm married to an emergency medicine physician as well, so we have a lot of impact to our family, to our community, and I just wanted to use this time every Monday to answer your questions, to give you some of my feedback about this week will be on telehealth. A couple weeks ago, I did a broadcast on how to teach kids to wash their hands, since washing hands is such a big deal. Last week, I talked about how to keep kids busy. So if you want to see those old broadcasts, it's live on my Facebook page, marybarbera.com/Facebook. So I am going to scroll through the comments in just a second. Like I said, I'm trying out some new technology, so it's always a little bit dicey. So bear with me and if you're having trouble, let us know and we can hopefully help you. Okay, so let me look here. And will this be available to watch afterwards? Yes. It's automatically recorded both on YouTube and on Facebook. And you can get to my YouTube or my Facebook channel by going to marybarbera.com/YouTube, marybarbera.com/Facebook. So everywhere you can find me and my information. I have weekly video blogs for over 3 years. I have weekly podcasts. My Turn Autism Around podcast comes out every Tuesday for over a year. And I have just been cranking out content to try to help both parents and professionals. As I said, I wrote my book, The Verbal Behavior Approach. It's in, I think, 13 languages now. I'm also working on a second book that won't be out for another year, but I'm excited about that as well. So as we see people in the comments, Alicia is from Finding Cooper's Voice, and That's another great blog and podcast for mostly for parents. We have somebody here from India. My son is 3 years old, yet not yet speaking. Give me some tips to help him speak. Yeah, now here's a good one. Because in addition to having lots and lots of free content, every week I come out with a new video blog. Every week I come out with a new podcast. In addition to all that free content, I also have two paid courses. One is a toddler preschooler course, which probably would be awesome for you. The woman from India who's asking about her 3-year-old, because time is of the essence. And the best way to find out about my paid online courses or to get into my world, if you're new to me, is by taking that quiz. It only takes 2 minutes. It's for both parents and professionals. And by taking the 2-minute quiz, you're going to let me know what areas you're struggling with, whether you're struggling with talking, like this woman from India is, whether you're struggling with tantrums and problem behaviors, potty training, sleeping, feeding, eating, weaning from a bottle or pacifier, potty training. I have lots of information. I have free information, and in my paid courses, I basically have it streamlined. And we also have a community so that when you have trouble getting through the content, or if there's any questions, we have a community that is supportive that will help you get through. And last week, actually, just a few days ago, somebody posted in my online community. I also have another course for parents and professionals working with kids 5 to 21. So my toddler preschooler course, and then my verbal behavior bundle is for if you're working or living or loving somebody who's a little bit older and still not conversational, very impaired with autism, that would be the bundle. But anyway, I got this comment and post in our closed Facebook group for the verbal behavior bundle, and it was a mom who gave me permission to share her story. And her son was 2 years, 1 month when she found my toddler course, and she took the toddler course. He made amazing progress, started out with a few words here and there, but she didn't know how to get him to talk or talk more. He didn't understand the difference between mommy and daddy, like really wasn't pointing, wasn't communicating, and was actually fearful of people and would scream if a stranger came near him, or even a relative or a friend of the family. So she made major gains just by taking my toddler preschooler course, and then she moved on to the verbal behavior bundle. And now 6 months later, he is pretty much caught up in all areas. He still doesn't have a diagnosis, and that's the real beauty. That's why I created the toddler preschooler course, because it's like parents are waiting in long lines. Now with coronavirus, a lot of people are getting their evaluations canceled, their appointments canceled, and a lot of times the clinic's closed, the speech therapy office is closed, or, which we're going to talk about, telehealth, which is, happening. But, if you have a 2-year-old with autism or signs of autism, or even if you have a 12-year-old with moderate to severe autism, telehealth is going to have to involve parental involvement, like to a much, much greater extent. So we're going to get into all of that in a moment, but I just did want to cover that. Okay, can you perhaps touch on this topic, as a lot of material online is on nonverbal children? So she wants to touch on. My question is for children with high functioning and struggle with emotional regulation. Yeah. A lot of my work is for kids who have moderate severe autism, who are not conversational. But what I know as a behavior analyst and a mom, and worked with thousands of kids with autism, and hundreds of them that were either high functioning from the start or high functioning towards the end, is that the same principles apply. You just have to kind of use the framework and apply it. So kids with emotional regulation issues, or who are refusing to do homework, or refusing to get a bath or a shower, or are perseverating on the same thing over and over again. That's all covered in my online courses and in some of my free video blogs and podcasts. So what I would do in your situation is, if you, and anybody out there listening, if you have a specific issue, go on, just search, Google search, Mary Autism High Functioning, Mary Autism Emotional Regulation. I don't know that I have a ton on emotional regulation or that constant self-stim, delayed echolalia. I have video blogs on tips to reduce that. Okay. I have a 3-year, 4-month-old is too old for early intervention. Early intervention is typically before school age starts. So early intervention, at least in the United States, is birth to 3. So up until age 3 is early intervention, almost always done in the home with the parent providing, being there for parent training. And then we have 3 to 5-year-olds, or 3 to kindergarten, age 3 to kindergarten age. And that is usually, at least in most of the United States, that's usually center-based, not a lot of parent involvement. Then you have the whole medical model of ABA, applied behavior analysis, being provided in clinics, in home, in schools. So depending on where you are, the level of functioning of your child, what kind of insurance they have, what kind of services are available, whether you live in a rural or suburban or a city, it can really be quite cumbersome of what services are available. And then when we add on the coronavirus, we have no idea how that's all impacting the whole situation. Okay, so Rob is struggling with telehealth and writing IEP for a 12-year-old with severe autism. Made videos for the parents to follow for errorless teaching, reinforcement, but I'm still struggling. So that's an excellent question. As questions are flying through here, and I'm trying to answer and trying to present something that's good for everyone, I am going to definitely tackle that question now as we move into the telehealth. But I have 2 helpers here, 2 staff members who are answering questions too. And if we get all done and I didn't get to your question, I'll go back in afterwards and type out some answers. You can always go to my website, marybarbera.com, and email me through there, and I'm happy to help. But I think the best thing for everybody to do afterwards, if you are not currently in my world or haven't ever looked at a workshop or consider my online courses, take that 2-minute quiz at marybarbera.com/quiz. But let me get on to answering some questions about telehealth and how you do that. So let's start off with, what is telehealth? So basically, telehealth is doing the therapy, whether that's speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, applied behavior analysis therapy, or psychological counseling for you or your child, or if you have a medical condition, instead of going into the office, you could meet with your doctor online and they could potentially evaluate, say, my mom, for instance, is having some pain from her existing condition of a disorder called trigeminal neuralgia. So she would be meeting with the doctor on the phone, describing her pain, describing when it comes, talking about medication and changing that up, taking data to see if that's working or not. Also, one of the medications that the doctor is adjusting might cause a fall in her sodium levels, so she's going to have to get blood work once a week. So all of that can be done at a distance. So for kids with autism and for kids at school, my college-age son Spencer is doing online education to finish up his degree and to graduate. But for many kids, especially kids with autism, starting any kind of therapy online, it presents unique challenges. It presents challenges such as, can they sit? Can they attend? Do they understand sentences? How much involvement does the parent need to have? Is the parent then working in her home, in his home, doing a paid job? And now we don't have just telehealth issues, we have supervision, safety issues, just so many things. Kids with autism tend to really like routine. And so one of my local friends, she has a 19-year-old with pretty significant autism, but she's somewhat conversational, and she had it in her head that everybody was going to school except for her, like she was being excluded somehow. And her church group, they were all meeting without her, and the mom couldn't really explain it to her, so she took her daughter, and they did went to where the buses were, and they were all stopped, and they were all parked, and the school, the lot was empty, the church, the lot was empty at the time when her church group would meet. And now she's able to get on Zoom with her classmates and her teacher to a certain degree. So there's all that kind of thing. Now, Rob has a question about 12-year-old with severe autism. Now, and there's a couple people in my group that are somewhat required to try to teach these kids programs like Language for Learning or direct instruction reading online, when even for that level of child in person would be nearly impossible. Online, it's going to be completely hard. But if you have a child, now it doesn't really matter if they're 2 or if they're 12 or if they're 20. If they don't have a lot of language, then I do think a parent or caregiver is best situated with them in front of a computer, and the parent is going to have to do the actual therapy, or if you have a very young child without autism or with autism. So my sister-in-law is a physical therapist, and she's doing telehealth. Now, that involves moving your body, moving the child's body into certain positions, holding that for 10 seconds. And that's all going to have to be, the child's body is going to have to be manipulated by the parent under the direction of the physical therapist. So you can understand that this is a change. It's a huge change for most people. But a couple things to think about before you do telehealth is, do you have a parent who is available and motivated to attend with the child? And are they able to take instructions? Are they able to have a camera on their device, whether that be a phone or a desktop or an iPad? You can do FaceTime. And so what I would do, let me just bend over here 1 second, is I have a shoebox program that I just tell people to get a shoebox. I like the kind of shoebox with a slit in it. I mean, you make a slit in it. I like the kind of shoebox that's attached. The cover's attached. And I have some other materials in here. I have flashcards. I have potato head parts. And I have the potato head. Potato head is another one of my favorites. If after this you want to search Mary Barbera shoebox and Mary Barbera potato head, I know I have videos demonstrating all of this. And instead of just showing the parents right away what to do, you may want to send them those videos, the shoebox and potato head. This is great for little kids who need early intervention virtually, as well as, just because the child is 12 that Rob is talking about doesn't mean that this is necessarily too babyish. It actually may be fun and motivating to both the child and the parent to just get flashcards or pictures of people. They do need to be printed out though, and I know that's a barrier for some people. My son was diagnosed in 1999, so we were still into getting pictures printed, and there was no digital pictures at the time, but now it's like it presents more of a barrier. I would also, if you have old flashcards laying around, I wouldn't just use them all. I saw a telehealth demonstration yesterday, and there was a little 2 year old, and some of the cards were like walrus and things like that. Like walrus is not and I don't think this child had autism, but let's really pick our materials carefully. So, king, I'm not so sure if it's a 12-year-old with severe autism or a 3-year-old with or without autism, if king is a big thing. Now this thing, I don't even know what it is, so I'm going to say, and it's a seal, but seal is not worth it. Also look for pictures that have 1 or 2 syllables. This will be important for articulation and those sorts of things. Kite is a nice, easy thing for kids to say. Not that kids have a ton of exposure to kites, though. So there's tent in here. If your family is big on camping and the child has a play tent and knows what it, has exposure to tents, just don't pick things like, I know in the language builder cards, which we get down the line after you're more into programming, they have a picture of a corn dog. It's like very few kids. If people have been using those, and I say, well, this child is from India, and they're vegetarian and they don't eat meat, and why are we teaching corn dog? The child has never seen it, will never see it, will never eat it, and it's just not. But B is a good, because that's a letter name. It's also easy, 1 syllable. Fish, it's always good. Monkey, 2 syllables, easy word, lots of books and kids kind of things. Sun, also parts of songs like Five Little Monkeys Jumping on the Bed, Mr. Sun, Mr. Golden Sun. That's cool. Cake, almost always, we can teach kids cake. Bird. So you get the idea, but pick your cards carefully. And if you're using real pictures, make sure there's only one family member or one item per picture. Sometimes people make the mistake and they use, a picture of the mom and she's riding a bike and she has a helmet on and sunglasses, and it might be too many things in the picture. And don't just use one picture of mom alone. Mom with different shirts, maybe if mom pulls her hair back sometimes, maybe some pictures like that. So the child learns to generalize pictures. And what you want to do with the shoebox is you want to hold up the picture, say it 3 times with the child sitting here. So if I were doing telehealth and I had my child here and I was getting coached, I would just have the parent say, cake, cake, cake. And even if the child doesn't talk and isn't saying cake, all they have to do is sit there nicely, take the picture, and put it in the slit in the shoebox. And that's a nice cause and effect kind of reaction. You can use the same idea with inset puzzles and potato head parts. Hold up the nose. You can even touch your own nose. Help the child touch his own nose. These are just some ideas to get things going, make it easy, make it fun. Remember, if you're starting telehealth, we can't be adding in hard stuff. We just want to get like general, happy kind of compliance and make the parent and the child feel successful. And like I said, online training is really where it's at. Like I've had people say, besides this woman that posted last week that basically caught her son up just with my courses, she had no other therapy, no diagnosis. You really have parents out there have a lot more power than you think you have, and you don't have to wait for long lines for professionals to help you. There is a lot you can do. Okay. All right. So let me see if we have more questions here or in the other place where we're doing live. So if you have a question or a comment, feel free to let me know. My son is 2 and he's autistic. He started therapy at 17 months. That's excellent that you've gotten therapy started. 2 is great. And the fact that he is already diagnosed and has started therapy, that's great. But just because a child has therapy, I find that there's about 100 waking hours in a week. And the more parents can learn about how to make bath time, how to make grocery store visits in normal conditions, not now. I wouldn't bring my child to a grocery store at this point. But how to make playtime, sleep time, everything using solid principles that are going to lead to happiness, safety, independence. That's what I really, I think some parents, they're like, oh, I have, 20 or 40 hours of therapy or daycare or whatever. I'm just going to leave it to the professionals. But I find that the more involvement one or both parents have, the better the child will do. And it just makes sense. How do you recommend assessing online? Would you use direct or indirect assessments? I have, as part of my 3-step guide, I have a 1-page assessment form. And that, they can post the link there, but I would have the parent do the 1-page assessment if they're not motivated or able to do that on their own. I would help them do that. It's really important that you get some kind of data from the parent. And then what I do is I would also make sure they that you assess too. If you're online on a camera, before I would say, okay, what kind of pictures should we get for the shoebox? What kind of puzzles? Is that appropriate? To determine what level they're at. And not just what level they're at, like one big number, but children with autism tend to have scattered skill. So they could be at this level for requesting or manding, this level. They could be for labeling or tacting, this level for answering questions or singing songs, this level for receptive communication, like touch your head, touch your nose, without any visuals. They can be at another level for imitation, do this, do this, do this. They can be at any kind of level for problem behaviors, any kind of level for sleep, eating, potty, going out into the community. And so I would say use both. Use indirect assessments where you have parents fill out just my 1-page form, which is super easy, can be done in less than 10 minutes. And then I would also double check. I know I tell this story a little bit because back when Lucas was young, when he was just diagnosed and they were assessing him, and I wrote on the paper, can he touch his body parts? And I wrote yes. And they may have said, what body parts can he touch? And I was like, head and toes and belly and nose or whatever. And so then when they assessed him and they checked to make sure he could do that, they said, we can't get him to touch his body parts. Like, could you show us how you do that? How you can get him to touch his body parts? And it was like, oh yeah, you have to sing the Barney song. First we touch our head and then our toes and belly and nose. Like it was a rhymey thing. I was doing it with him, so I was prompting imitatively. And they weren't trying to like check up on me or make me feel bad, but it's super important that you're not programming, oh, okay, he knows nose and belly and toes and head. Now we're going to start with teeth and thumb, and because you're building on a base that isn't accurate, isn't solid. So that's a problem. Okay, so okay. Watching TV and playing on iPad, it's bad, especially now when we're stuck at home. Yeah. And the more there are apps that are more educational, it's just that the parent, especially if a child, I mean, I think this was the same woman who said her child was 2, um, they're going to need assistance and supervision all the time, and it's exhausting. And if you're working from home, or even if you have other kids and just your own sanity, I mean, keeping an eye, a close eye, and trying to teach for so many hours a day is exhausting. So, maybe you have some ideas about screen time that in the past you were always like, no more than 1 hour screen time a day for, the American Academy of Pediatrics. But we can't like count screen time now, like the face-to-face screen time for virtual ABA therapy or speech therapy. We can't count that as screen time. We can't count video FaceTiming their grandparents as screen time. We can't count an educational app that you're doing with the child because you don't have printed out material at your, beck and call. So I would just caution people not to be too restrictive to really weigh you down as much as you're probably being weighed down. I am going to pop into Facebook here and see if I can see any questions because it's not showing up here. And I know Kara and Samantha are in listening to questions. And unfortunately, there's a lot of questions on both platforms. So, okay. All right. And so Rob with the 12-year-old who with severe autism that he's trying to do virtual therapy with, telehealth, he's hyperlexic. And I know I did do a video blog on hyperlexia. So hyperlexia is the ability to identify letters and read before you can speak. And it tends to be a scattered skill in quite a few kids with autism. So we want to use that ability, maybe with textual prompts, following a textual schedule, maybe the shoebox, and maybe he would be better instead of language for learning. Maybe he would be more interested in Head Sprout reading on the computer, or teach your child to read in 100 easy lessons, because he is interested in reading. The problem is that if kids learn to read before they can understand language, it just gets very not functional. I tell the story sometimes of a boy that I went into for the first time to consult when he was in 6th grade, and he was in a learning support classroom reading aloud, and it happened to be September 11th, 2005, and he was reading a passage from 9/11, which happened in 2001, and he had clearly had fluent reading, on a cold or on a crisp, beautiful, sunny day on September 11th, 2001, and the plane crashed into Tower 1. And as he's reading, then he's taking breaks and he's like, clearly no comprehension of the magnitude or what. And so to teach kids to read more without the comprehension can often cause a lot of issues. And so, yeah, it's tough. And I think the whole corona virus issue, I know I've posted in marybarbera.com/Facebook. I've posted a ton about how to teach children to hand wash, and the coronavirus kind of visual social story thing that you might be able to use. But I know for my son, he's 23, he still has the comprehension of a young child. And for many of our clients and children, they don't understand. They don't understand why they can't go to their favorite restaurant, or to the store, or to the mall, or to the pool, or to exercise, in a gym, if that's where they're they can't go to church group, they can't go to school. It's a lot. And kids that tend to perseverate and not do well with change, it's really a lot. So my heart goes out to families. I know there are, crisis hotlines and those sorts of things, but I know there's a lot of people struggling with children of various ages with autism who are stuck inside and they just don't understand. Okay, so Carmen said, I have a 5-year-old with autism. He's struggling with his telehealth sessions. And so I know nothing about your son, Carmen, other than he's 5 years old and struggling. So one of the things I would think is, maybe watch a couple of my videos on the shoebox program and puzzles and see if you can get some responding going. Also, it's super important to have some reinforcement by the computer at your sessions, or whether you're doing them alone or with support. Because if you don't have, most people think, you shouldn't need a lot of reinforcement, but our kids with autism do need a lot of reinforcement. And I did a video blog a while back on bribery versus reinforcement, and that's a really good one to watch. But basically, our kids with autism usually need a ton of reinforcement in order to make progress in the difficult areas, especially with all the change that's involved. So before you bring a child to a table or try to introduce the shoebox, which seems so easy, but it's something new and it might be hard. So you want to bring some edibles, drink, maybe their iPad, and start playing games on the iPad together in between short little bursts of shoebox and those sorts of things. Also ask the therapist if they have ideas on how you could reinforce. I know when Lucas went to occupational therapy when he was little, one of the things that really worked well with him is she would just have a visual schedule, just very simple. First, we're going to do the ball exercises, then we're going to do cutting, and then she would just have like little pictures. And then at the end, he was going to do something fun that he liked to do there, like he liked to roll around on the little scooter. So he could just see, like, in this half an hour, we're going to do this, 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 and this. And so maybe a visual schedule, maybe just a hand drawing. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. But maybe the therapist would also have some ideas about how to build in reinforcement during telehealth sessions. And then if you can watch some of my video blogs and come in with some ideas too. This is new for everybody. So professionals, a lot of times they've been an OT or a speech therapist or an ABA therapist for many years. They've never done it via telehealth. So they should be open to your ideas about how you can help things. Okay, so I've used flashcards and dropped slides. On slides and dropped off flashcards. He's highly verbal. This is the 12-year-olds with severe autism, but very scripted. So I do have some video blogs on echolalia, delayed echolalia, scripting, stimming, and you may want to check those out. Okay, just scrolling through these comments. There's so many comments, so thank you for your participation, and I hope I can get to most of the comments. Some of my students are really stuck regarding not having a concrete date that we will be able to go back to school. I am totally with your students because I am having a problem too, not knowing. I just said to my son that goes to college, I'm like, how is this all going to work out? Like, how is it going to end up? It is really concerning. And I think it would be better, if you prepare for a blizzard or a hurricane or whatever, you can kind of know, like, it's going to take 3 months to rebuild, or it's going to take 1 year to rebuild, or whatever the situation. But it's like this blizzard that never ends. And so I would say, for the kids that have good comprehension and good verbal skills, I am totally with you. And, I think reaching in and helping kids and parents and adults and professionals keep thinking, okay, what am I grateful for? What can I learn? Like some of my online participants are like, I am using this time to teach potty training because I'm going to be home anyway. And that's kind of one of the big things. I know personally, I started taking piano lessons on FaceTime. I'm working out with my personal trainer on FaceTime. I used to go to the gym. Um, I took a painting class on FaceTime, and Creative Spirit Painting is a friend of mine, and she has a lot of free lessons for kids. I painted this. This is a paid lesson on flowers, but she has some free lessons on Creative Spirit Painting. It's a page on Facebook, and you can help your kids draw or paint or color or markers, a bunny and a butterfly and a couple other things. So check out that page. Lucas's music therapist did a music therapy class online. So whatever your child is interested in, hopefully you can find things on YouTube that are not just stimmy and not just the same things over and over again, but maybe you could explore some of the things that might help. My son now is picking his lips and hitting again. We struggling with back at the beginning. He's also type 1 diabetic. Wow. Yeah. I noticed that Lucas's hands were a little bit more picky than normal too, and it's concerning because, especially with type 1 diabetes, in addition to it, it is very frightening to think about, like, kind of going backwards in these areas. I would say if he's picking with his fingers, trying to keep him busy with his hands, um, would be as good, but it's many hours of the day. And make sure if they do get infected, make sure, it can turn into impetigo or staph infection, which would not be a good thing. So don't be afraid to call the pediatrician, and maybe there's some cream or maybe an antibiotic or something like that. So, as a nurse and a behavior analyst, I am acutely aware of how medical things. So you think it's just a habit, but it's actually a staph infection or impetigo that's making him pick. Maybe he caused it initially by boredom, but now it's turned into something else that actually needs a medical treatment. So keep an eye on it. Lauren says, we have to turn off the camera for the therapist and it helps so he doesn't feel intimidated with the eye contact. Okay. And maybe you could take videos, of you doing therapy with him and send it to them ahead of time. That might help as well. Okay. So I think I got all the questions there. Let me just go on here. Okay, so Mary, is there any way I can teach my son to talk? He is nonverbal. Yeah, I'm not sure how old he is, but I have my questions would be: is he completely not saying anything, any sounds, any babbling? A lot of times when parents or professionals say that my child's nonverbal, and then when I probe deeper, it's like, well, he does say mom occasionally, or hi, or he does babble. He does say baba for bye bye, but it's nothing you can understand. So I would probe a little bit deeper. I would, depending on his age, I would consider one of my online courses. It's not just about getting children to talk. It's also about getting children to understand, imitate, play, have their problem behaviors go down, eating, sleeping. A lot of times feeding and eating issues can also are related. Like, show me a child who's not talking and not saying anything, and I can't even think of one example where the child is eating fine, drinking fine, drinking out of an open cup and a straw, not addicted to a pacifier or bottle, eating fine, a variety of textures, eating with utensils, chewing and swallowing fine. Because a lot of the oral motor progression you need to start drinking out of an open cup and a straw and chewing hard things and soft things, and it's all related to the oral motor system that is responsible for talking and articulation. So I would say take the 2-minute quiz, watch the workshop, consider joining the course. If you can't join the course at this time, take advantage of my free resources and get some quick wins. The shoebox, potato head. You can just Google Mary Autism Talking, and there's a variety of free podcasts. Turn Autism Around anywhere you listen to podcasts, including iHeartRadio, Pandora, of course, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Also available on my website at marybarbera.com/podcast. I have lots of interviews with speech pathologists, lots of me talking. So all that is good. All right. Thank you for sharing your success with the courses. How awesome that you've started potty training. Way to go. Oh, that's a response from... okay, so Yobana said, I just want to add that I have already taken 2 courses from Mary Barbera and they are great. I started potty training with my son following her method and it works. Awesome. That is so exciting. Thank you for posting that. I saw before that you said if a child is not pointing, it's possibly a sign of autism. He's not. Should I be worried he will say this if he wants something? Pointing is lack of pointing with your index finger, not only for things the child wants, but also to show you things like an airplane up in the sky or pointing from a distance to show that there's something exciting in the room can be an early warning sign of autism. I did do a video blog on pointing. I did a video blog on the MChat, which is something you can do at home, depending on your age. Now, if you have a 3-year-old who's pointing, that's not really, that doesn't mean that's not autism. So, because pointing should start to happen after a child's first birthday, definitely by the age of 18 months. And they should be pointing not just once every blue moon. They should be pointing frequently with their index finger, pointing with their hand or reaching with their hand or taking your hand and putting on an item they want, which is called hand leading. It's actually a warning sign of autism. So pointing is a big deal for kids in that 1 to 18 month range. And it's something to look for. It's not the be all end all. I'm sure there's kids that have not pointed by that point who go on to not have autism, but it is a concerning sign. But the great thing about my courses and all my free materials is that it doesn't matter if it's autism, if it's ADHD, if it's a speech delay, if it's nothing, if it's a stubborn child, if it's whatever, the techniques I teach will help regardless. Amy said, I love your book, Mary. My cousin is a BCBA and PA, recommend it and changed our lives. Oh, thank you. It's our behavior Bible. So I don't know if you were on in the beginning, Amy, but I am writing a second book. It will be out next year. And it is going to be for parents and early intervention professionals, mostly for kids under 5 with signs of autism or with autism. So I want to really empower parents. Of course, it's going to help parents and professionals with older kids who are very delayed and not potty trained and not talking and all that stuff. But I want to focus specifically on that parents of young kids, because that's, the earlier you treat this, the better. And it's just such a important thing. So, okay, let me see here. I'm going to take this quiz thing off. Okay, let me answer. Do I make him sit at one place? He's mostly walking or running around even while eating. Yeah, it's super important that you teach sitting behavior. And I know a lot of behavior analysts um, really encourage floor play, and especially with young kids or early learners. And what I found is just the opposite. I get very little kids sitting at a table very early on, because at the table we can do fun things like the shoebox and potato head and insect puzzles. And then we can start with matching and receptive touching of different things. And it provides a boundary where we have all the good stuff there. We've got all the reinforcers. We have the rest of the room pretty much sanitized, if you will. Not clean or super, just really pared down, so that if they leave the table, actually we have all the good stuff. So there's really no reason to leave the table. But if they leave the table, it's not about us forcing them to sit at the table with us. The table should be fun, should be very reinforcing. So yeah, it is important. And for feeding, it's super important too, to have a child sit, because there's a risk of choking, and you're not really going to be able to progress to foods they don't like, to utensils, to mushy things, if they're running around and have total control and are feeding and drinking, even drinking out of a bottle, using a pacifier, all of that stuff. If they're just running around and have free reign, it's going to be hard to wean that pacifier or get the child to use utensils if you don't start having them sit. And I have very specific ways I help kids learn to sit, not by force, not by crying. I don't want any crying. And, some people have bad experiences with ABA. I have a very child-friendly ABA approach. I do not believe in crying, for extended periods of time. Of course, kids are going to cry, and it's not always going to be, a walk in the park. But the quicker we can get kids happy, safe, absolutely safe, number one, independent as possible, and as happy as possible, the better they will do, and the better the parent will do, and the better the professionals will do as well. We want happy kids doing things that are relatively easy. So if you're going to use telehealth or you're going to be in person, 80% of what we're doing should just be review, easy, fun stuff. We're just going to slide in some harder stuff and harder stuff for this boy that's running around eating. A hard thing is to sit. And that's the behavior we're looking for. So some people think like hard work like involves academics and that sort of thing. No, for a lot of kids with autism or signs of autism, that hard stuff can just be things like sitting, can just be things like putting a picture in a shoebox without saying anything. So we have to really break things down so it's easy and fun and we see progress. I started your toddler course, and my main concern is my son is 3 years old and not speaking a word. Yeah, so and if you just start our toddler course, hopefully you're getting through the course, because it's all laid out to help you get speech, hopefully, help you get communication through sign, through those sorts of things. But really, almost in every case with the kids that I've worked with directly and online, we've managed to get some words. I can't say that we've managed to get conversation, full sentences, but especially if there's any babbling or any sounds, we work hard to just get really get language, especially speaking. So since you're a part of our program, make sure you join that Facebook group, closed Facebook group, and ask any questions as you go through the course. All right, so I don't know that I've handled a lot of questions. All right, here's a few more questions, and then we're going to wrap up by the top of the hour. I've watched a lot of your videos and they're very informative. Why medical professionals tell you to wait for a diagnosis when your child is premature, and when should you start to be concerned? I would keep a close eye on your child. I have a free guide at marybarbera.com/toddler, and that is uh, basically keep track of milestones, not just red flags for autism. So depending on how old your child is, now the whole premature thing, um, it can be a factor for sure. Okay, so say your child is, you know, born 2 months early. So by the time they get to 6 months, one could argue that they're really 4 months, right? But then once they get to 12 months, they should be at least 10 months of age, developmentally. So I I would just keep an eye. Now, maybe it might be depressing. So just say your child is, I don't know how old your child is, but let's just say he's 2 years old now and he was premature by 2 months. So he should be functioning at least at an 18-month level for all of his skills, and maybe a 24-month-old level for some of his skills. So I would personally keep a close eye on typical milestones and red flags for autism. I would look at my video blog for the MChat, and I would get early intervention evaluations. I would get on a wait list for a developmental pediatrician. But in the meantime, I would strongly consider taking my online course because, like I said before, it doesn't matter if it's ADHD, if it turns out to be just a sensory processing issue or speech delay, or the fact that they were premature and they're just going to take a little longer to catch up. So just be on top of it and know that you don't have to wait. You can intervene. I have a twin. They'll be 3 in July, and they're not talking. Is it something to worry about? Yeah, by 3, children should definitely be talking, and they should be putting at least 2 or 3 words together in little sentences. So I would definitely take that quiz, marybarbera.com/quiz, and consider taking my online courses. And you could, if you can't afford my online courses, or now's not the right time, you can use all my free resources. It's just time is of the essence. The quicker you can get your children either caught up or catching up or not having tantrums or speaking more, the better they're going to do, the better you're going to feel that you're actually making progress. And I know it can be done. Okay. From Iran, and I had 5. My son is 5. He got autism. He can talk not very well. I took him to game therapy and speech therapy. He has improved, but I am very worried about his school. Yeah, so Sarah, I would take the quiz and consider the online course to really put it together. All right, and somebody is asking, how do they learn basic ABA therapy? Again, take the quiz and consider the online course. Let me just put up the quiz again. So I think I'm going to be done with questions now. We went for about an hour. Hopefully I gave you some tips on telehealth and online training and trying to make it through this coronavirus period. I'm planning on coming on here live every Monday at 1 p.m. So if you want to join me every Monday as much as you possible, you can also watch the replay. And if you have a question that we didn't address and you want the answer, just go to marybarbera.com and contact us through our website, and we'll be happy to answer your questions. So I look forward to seeing you next week. Hope you have a good week. Stay safe, and I will see you next time. Bye.